So the next topic is transforming societies and behaviors research coupled to action. We have Franziska and Lukas.
You have to go here. I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it. It's usually F5, but it's usually here. Anais, can you help us? Is the Apple thing?
Yeah, can you open it?
I don't see the presentation mode thing.
That's
Cool.
better. To open it on the full screen?
Yeah, I'll do it
yeah,
now.
we
It's
have
now.
it.
It's we
Okay.
have it. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, I start. Yes.
Not yet. Yeah, it's there. And this is your,
Yeah. With this one down here.
or this
Yeah.
one with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, and we will start with the final presentation, and you will see that it will touch on almost all the other presentations that you have heard today. My name is Franziska Matthies, and I work with the Helmholtz Center in Munich.
Yes. Good afternoon. I'm Lukas Pokorny from the Masaryk University Recitox. And I'm actually substituting today here Kateřina Šepková, who's sending her regards from Bali from the Conference of Parties of the Minamata Convention, and her apologies as well. So thanks for having me here.
We have not listed all colleagues here who have contributed because it was across the whole HERA consortium. Where do I press? Here?
Right.
Okay. Well, we have heard the term transformational change many times today, and we've decided to bring up one slide to show what we're talking about. This graph was published in the WBGU main report on transformation in 2011, and it shows that many solutions, and this can potentially be a new technology or behavioral change, is hidden in and present at niche level. And sudden events in megatrends can open up windows of opportunity which allow them to become the new mainstream, which in turn potentially influence megatrends again. And such a window of opportunity has been opened, for example, through the Fridays for Future movement or the pandemic. So things are changing. And we've been talking about this today in several presentations. RG6 focuses on the need of transformational change to address the intertwined environmental, social, and health issues and reach critical global goals towards sustainability and equity. Societies, as Robert said this morning, will need to adapt to the challenges elicited by environmental stresses and climate change. But they will also need to mitigate climate change and environmental degradation, including loss of biodiversity, and to move on a path towards sustainable development. This will require significant transformation in policy making, industry, economy, as well as in attitudes and individual and collective behavior across the sectors and silos. So, Lukas, can you give us an overview over RG6 and how it's positioned in the agenda?
Yes, thanks, Franziska. Actually, now you can see the very well-known graphic design that we have been using since the beginning, and you can see that the RG6 is indeed a very special animal, so to say. It sits in the middle, and it drives, it's very nicely put here, it drives the green circle and then also the more substantive RGs in the yellow circle forward, actually. And it's actually encouraging to, I have listened to all your presentations, and I think RG6 has popped up many times in your presentations, and you can see it's inherently present in your in the other RGs, and it should be an organic kind of part of all what has been done and what will be done, because without I'll start from the last ones, sub-RGs, without proper science and risk communication, without the need or without the transformation in the way we educate kids, but also university students, there can be no progress, and I think the deterioration of the environment will continue. Of course, I'm not speaking about the first 4 RGs, ethical, political issues, definitely a very important aspect, policy, science policy transfer. I will be speaking later about these issues, but I think we all understand that the RG6 is an essential part of all what has been done and what will be done with this agenda. Franziska, a few examples now on concrete transformational change.
Yeah, you have seen this slide in a similar way this morning, and let's fill it with some more concrete research needs. If you recall what Lukas had shown you, the RG6 sub-RGs, the first one is on preparedness. And research should support epidemiological intelligence for preparedness, response, and resilience in view of future acute events and crises. New tools and more integrated protocols for preparedness, surveillance, monitoring, and emergency response that can be adapted rapidly to different threats are needed. To achieve healthier and sustainable societies, drivers and barriers of transformational change in policy, economy, and technology, and cultural shifts and behavioral change, for example, looking at social tipping points, need to be investigated. Transformational change is a key dimension of holistic research and implementation concepts such as planetary health or One Health. Framing and investigating the case for transformational action and social change is required in order to prioritize the research and implementation agenda across sectors to achieve collective, societal, and cultural change and change of mindsets towards sustainability. We've heard today already about digitalization. It is central for transformational changes in production, infrastructures, and business for the future. It is discussed as a key tool in several of the action or strategic EU plans. However, the implications on health and environment need further focus as covered in the present RG. Holistic approaches are needed to investigate complex exposures and the implications for addressing social and environmental inequity, with a focus on vulnerable population groups. Participatory research with underrepresented groups needs to be utilized to address societal needs. System-wide and equitable preventive policies for a healthy, fair, inclusive and resilient society are counting on coherent multi-sector strategies in order to improve environmental health conditions and the social determinants of health. And these need to be developed. The relationship between humankind and nature and the role in conservation needs need to be scrutinized and adjusted from an ethical and philosophical point of view, including human and animal rights, as well as intergenerational and social responsibilities. There's a need for applying emergent research designs and project management that make use of transdisciplinary work and transformational change. this will allow new questions and issues to actually emerge at the horizon during the research process, potentially leading to substantial changes of the research itself, and ultimately to the established research culture. And you, Lukas, have some more examples.
Yes, I will. When I thought about these issues, I kind of reverted back to COVID, because I think COVID was in many aspects, for me at least, a magnifying glass of the problems that now we are facing. And at that time, in those difficult times, it was clear that, at least in the Czech Republic, and I think also in many other countries, that the cooperation between scientists and politicians was not working properly and effectively. Also that the functioning science policy platforms, interfaces, institutionalized, were not in place. And this caused chaos. If you take the 2020 Eurobarometer that actually asked people about if they understood the world around them, they said only 22%, if I'm not mistaken, said in the EU that they kind of understood what is going on around in the world around them. In the Czech Republic is even worse. More than half of the nation said they were confused. And this is quite alarming, and I think it needs to change. One step, small step forward, just to give you an example that things are improving, I think, in my opinion, is the yes. This is an article, or actually a commentary rather, published last year by one of our scientists and a collective of scientists working at RECETOX. And this article actually called for establishment of a science policy panel on chemicals to make the communication between scientists and politicians more effective. And now with the recent UNEA 5, United Nations Environmental Assembly, that was just concluded in last week or the week before in Nairobi, we have a result. There is a resolution that calls and has a clear plan for establishing a science policy panel that would include scientists, that would in the end feed into political discussions, and of course include also stakeholders. So I think this is something encouraging, and it is also an opportunity to see good examples. And I'll conclude a few examples that I've given here with, again, maybe touching base where we are regarding communication. If you consider the sheer number of scientific journals, it's 30,000 scientific journals in existence, basically generating 2 million scientific articles per year. This is, I think, simply an overwhelming amount of information, and it's beyond capacities of each one of us, and not talking about the society at large, to absorb this knowledge. So I think HERA comes at the right moment with its research needs. It says what needs to be done. It says where the focus should be, and I think it's a very solid document that should be distributed widely to politicians, to scientists, to students, to show a way forward. Franziska.
So towards the end of our presentation, we would like to demonstrate the relevance of transformational change for overarching and strategic goals. And one example is the European Green Deal, that is also the topic of the day today. In fact, to achieve implementation of the strategies of the Green Deal, for example, a circular economy action plan or a biodiversity strategy to protect nature and reverse the degradation of ecosystems, or the farm to fork strategy, transformational change will be needed to achieve the actual implementation in the member states, in the European member states. And most of these strategies are actually closely connected to the environment, climate change, and health nexus. So there is the need for research, and it's outlined in the agenda, on what is facilitating transformational change, and what are barriers for transformational change, and what is helping us to implement, and what are the difficulties. And you see here the different strategies, and it's also described in more detail in the agenda.
Also to chip in from my side with a document that is actually holistic in its core. That's the Agenda for Sustainable Development 2030, adopted already in 2015. And I think I will not exaggerate if I say that the approach that was taken back then in 2015 was a very innovative one, because out of those 17 goals, the first 7 goals are kind of translation of the Millennium Development Goals, and then starting with 8 until 17, these goals are basically multi-sectoral goals that pose not only, that are an opportunity, but pose, of course, also a huge challenge to policymakers and governments to implement them. And I think it's a HERA agenda that states that the SDGs will only be achieved through transformational changes across the economic, social, political, and technological fabric of society. And it's not an easy task. And I can tell you from my experience as a government official responsible for the implementation of ASD 2030, it was a hot potato that we actually were shuffling around with other ministries and prime minister's office, because it is a huge challenge to get together people from the environmental sector, from the health sector, from the energy sector, because, for example, a goal called clean and affordable energy, it's not only about economy, it's about the society, it's about environment, and you need people to act together. Unfortunately, in many states, still, the governments are operating in silos with strictly delineated responsibilities and aspects. So, for example, cooperation on noise or light pollution or even human biomonitoring, at least again in my country, is a huge challenge, because the cooperation between ministries of environment and health, it just doesn't work properly, and we will need to focus on this also with the help of HERA agenda that gives us example where we can actually, how we can proceed and what's the way forward.
Well, and to conclude, we would like to put forward 6 key messages, and these are to develop holistic approaches, to strengthen transdisciplinary and cross-sectoral research and collaboration, to apply innovative and participatory research designs and decision-making processes, to work towards solutions that consider socioeconomic and social ecological aspects and focus on the most vulnerable population groups, to improve the science policy society dialogue and focus on creative science communication to the public, and to use transformational change approaches in research, education, and capacity building. The aim of HERA was to identify and prioritize the major research fields and tools that could address the issues raised in today's presentations. Research is required not only to increase knowledge in relation to these identified fields and needs, but also to improve the integration of available knowledge and advance understanding of its effects in public policy, implementation, and transformational action, and to support human resources development, including training and education, as well as citizens' awareness and involvement in this respect. Inclusive governance and inclusive and informed governance approaches are needed to enable sustainable transformational change to take place. And we can see here on this illustration how these key elements and the conclusions and the sub-RGs of RG6 lead to the planetary health approach. And I don't know, have you added the final slide? Because what we noticed today is that there is a beautiful drawing showing all the elements and all the RGs, and we would like at the end to show how they actually come together and how they fit together and how it makes the whole agenda. Yes, let's go.
Again, Mentimeter, I guess your favorite platform now. Not mine, because I don't know how to actually put it on. Anais, thanks.
Yeah, we have. Just a second. Yep.
Thanks. So,
Where's the code is on top?
yeah, the code is here. And then I'll open new browser. Thanks. All right, so if you would be so kind, go to Mentimeter, and I guess the answers then will be shown when I press S, correct? Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes to have a look, log in, and share with us your experience of a transformational change in your professional context. Yes, one. Never thought I could. No, I never felt the need to. 7 people now. It's a difficult question, so I guess it needs some time. Yes. Uh, 12. All right, so I mean, I don't want to call upon people who actually had the opportunity to induce transformational change, but if you want to share with us your experience, it would be good if you grab a mic and tell us actually how did you make it happen, and what actually was your experience. Of course, also those that who never felt the need to, very welcome to share with us your views as well.
I think it helps to be the one in charge. I mean, it really does. But it also takes a lot of work and a lot of time. And I think involving people in the discussions, just like if you're doing community work and you want to do focus groups, I think if you want to bring about change in an organization, you also need to do that kind of giving everybody a piece of the action so that everyone feels that they have helped it to bring about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah, I think.
Does anybody want to add? I just want to see if.
And second question, we had the second question, so I'll press. Oh, let's try this. Yeah, which topic would you like to see prioritized in transformational change research? So here is more straightforward, and the answers. No, it's not the same, but the first one was personalized kind of question. This one is about topics. Healthier and sustainable societies, science policy, everything. Transformational change. Again, speaking from my own experience as a government official, I think what is not inducive to actually bringing about change is a stiff hierarchical structure and administration. And I think in this sense, I very often actually cite an example of, or want to emphasize the role of NGOs, because very often they don't have this, they don't work, NGOs, in that hierarchical structure where you have to obey in a way, and they can bring about through demonstrations, through activism, they can show how transformational change can be achieved. Any comments?
Any comments?
So thank you very much. I think it was a perfect final presentation because it makes the full agenda coherent and looking forward. The only thing probably I would emphasize about the transformational is that, I mean, we need to understand that the current emphasis came with a sense of urgency. And to a large extent, the sense of urgency is new for us. I mean, obviously 9 million deaths for pollution, it should call for urgency, but we have not seen this as an issue of extreme urgency in the past. So what came the sense of urgency is the earth scientists saying, guys, here there is evidence on tipping points, and these tipping points can lead us to existential threats in years. I mean, and I think this is then relates to complexity, and I think what it makes challenging for me to think about transformative changes is that I usually found myself thinking deterministically about transformative changes, and it's not like that. It's complex, okay? And the only comment is about one thing that you say that I found it a bit discouraging, that you say, well, 30,000 journals, how you can cope with the scientific evidence, and I think that probably we need new methods. And there was a very recent paper I found fascinating, was in Lancet Planetary Health. It was by Leah Berrangford and Alan Dangor, and they did a review, a machine learning review on climate change and health. And they predicted 15,000 papers. And using machine learning, they did a wonderful review. They show that we are vastly dominated by impact assessment studies with few research on adaptation and mitigation, and almost nothing about integrating mitigation with adaptation. I mean, and I think this is an example of the type of the methods we need to understand the science that it's going on, and probably will help to understand the opportunities for transformative changes. Thank you. And sorry for being so long.
It may also be an idea to change how you measure successful research, and not only in terms of published papers, but maybe on action implemented, successfully implemented, something like that.
Absolutely. You need to deal with different data sources. I mean, it's not about, probably it's about the mass media, governmental reports and everything, but it can be done.
Okay,
Here we have the picture now, and you can see in the different colors the different RGs. And we leave it on for the discussion. Yes.
Okay. So my comment is simpler. It is for one of the things that we have been talking about during the day, and it appeared in one of the slides about the focus on vulnerable groups. Actually, I think it's wrong to say it like that. It is not focus on vulnerable groups. It is including vulnerable groups. You know, if we go to the Jeffrey Rose paradigm, most of the cases will not happen. Most of the effects will not happen in the vulnerable groups. It will happen in the non-vulnerable groups. But you know, these groups are not researched. They are not. We don't do any interventions. So we definitely have to include. But it is not that to do well our work and. Whatever type of work, transformational or non-transformational, we have to focus on these groups. We just have to make sure they are in.
Last point, how are we doing with time, Chair? Done. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Robert says done. Oh, just last remark to the kind of discussion about 30,000 journals and 2 million articles per year. I think what we kind of neglect, and I would definitely agree with Franziska, that we need new ways of measuring scientific impact, in my view, and myself not being scientist, so please excuse my audacity to say so. But I think it's a director of the Science Museum in Britain, I forgot his name, but he's written a whole book about how science should again learn how to speak to people in stories. And I think this is what we are neglecting. We are publishing hundreds and thousands of articles, but no one is actually then has the capacity, simple, capacity and time and money to translate this into appealing stories that actually can speak to people and can induce transformational change. Because he cited one example back in 40s when they were showing a group of 100 people rotating circles, triangles, and other shape. And then they were asking the people what they saw, and they were telling stories how, oh yes, the triangle was chasing the circle, and I think it fell in love with that. And then people's minds are created, and where we are shaped to perceive the world in stories, and actually then translate what we know into stories and tell to our kids, to other people. We need stories to survive, and I think this is what's been neglected in the research a bit, that we've forgotten to tell stories. This is the story. Exactly, that's a very good example.
Right, Annetta has a comment.
This is also about framing health in environment and climate change and other environmental crises, to tell the story from the health perspective.
Yeah. Just to this point, I would, in a sense, we were discussing before things we have forgotten, and it was the businesses and it was the communities. But when we now talk about transformational change and communication, I think, is it really us, the scientists, who need to do that? Or is it not other people who are actually much better in doing it? And so we also need to be vocal, I agree. But in a way, I see that that we need this continuum of people whom we engage with, and also hand off information. And I think at least the COVID-19 pandemic, in a sense, was good, because the journalists actually did, in many parts, a really good communication job. And so should we not use this momentum also for the topic of HERA?